Alrighty, here we go. Third video here for research methods. Okay, so again, one of those 45-minute videos that they send out, and here's my attempt to shorten it for you guys. So I think the couple videos ago, I think it ended with like operational definitions, and then I think the one I just did outside, I think was ending with single blind and double blind studies. So we'll kind of knock out the rest of it, most of it right now. So we'll start with representation bias. And what you really want to know about that is, again, how can the results be the most valid, right? So if you thought about, let's pick Reiser, okay? So Maddie Reiser is on prom committee, and Maddie, she really wants her senior prom to be, I don't know, Hollywood stars theme or something like that, right? Where you got to dress up like your red carpet and that kind of stuff. Okay, so Maddie really wants that, but Maddie's job is to survey the rest of, I don't know, Pleasant Plains High School or the rest of the senior class or the junior class or whatever. And she wants to know, her job is to get input on what everybody else wants, right? So Maddie has this idea in her head of what she would like to pursue. And so she makes a survey. So she could have representation. She's representing herself. She could have that bias in how she words those questions, right? Making a Hollywood theme sound really, really attractive in her questions. And the other theme's not as attractive, okay? Or she could have that bias and basically making sure the people who she knows is going to side with her, making sure they get the surveys, right? And making sure she, make sure she inputs that data. Whereas everyone else, well, if they didn't take the survey, no big deal. I'm not going to track them down. Or if it looked like they were busy, I'm not going to give them a survey, right? So representation bias, again, it's just, it can impact the results. It can make sure they're not as valid. And so you have to find ways to reduce that. We talked about two of them last time, the single blind study and the double blind study. And again, those exist to reduce the Hawthorne effect. Those exist to reduce domain characteristics, right? So what else we want would be randomness, basically, right? Because everything you need, that representation, everything you are trying to learn, you are trying to prove, you need that to represent as big of a population as possible. Because again, if Phineas Gage, right, damaging that left frontal lobe, if Phineas Gage was the only person whose behavior ever changed as a result of damage to that part of the brain, then we didn't really learn much at all, right? But because we were able to prove it represents a larger portion that other people have had that same thing, we learned something, right? That was very useful. That was very relevant, right? So we want all of our findings in psychology, hopefully, represent a larger portion, right? Those case studies, Genie, right? All that stuff that you look at, you want to learn about, as many people as possible by studying as few, right? So randomness kind of allows that to happen. So random sample, you are not very specifically looking to bring very specific certain people into your experiment. And hopefully that represents the larger population, right? So again, Maddie using that survey, she wants as many people to complete that survey as possible, right? If she's really wanting to learn what Pleasant Plains wants in a prom, she is having as many people fill out that survey as possible, juniors and seniors and males and females and people on prom committee and people not on prom committee, right? So she is wanting as many, that the more she learns, right? The more she includes, the more she learns. Sorry, something just popped up on my computer. So random, basically what psychology is going to want you to know, random basically means every person, any person has as likely or as fair of a chance of being included as anyone else, right? So I'm not just going to locate people who agree with my Hollywood themed prom, right? I want everybody to have an equal chance, everybody a fair chance to participate. And again, that's just allowing Maddie to learn, as much as she possibly can. So again, random could be, Maddie seeking out every the first person from every letter in the alphabet, right? Or every 10th person on a class roster, or whatever it might be, right? Completely fair. It's completely random, right? Not just females, or not just female seniors, or anything like that, right? Where you are going to manipulate the outcome. It's really, 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 really difficult. I hesitate to say possible, but near impossible to have a totally random and representative population for research, right? So it might be random, but that doesn't mean that random applies to the larger population, right? That doesn't mean that random people you brought in ends up being representational, right? So again, Maddie might have gone down that random order, and all of a sudden the people taking the surveys are 75% female seniors, right? It randomly happened, but those results are not going to be representational to what Snell wants, right? Or to what Drew Washam wants, or, that doesn't mean, everybody is represented. Again, do the people in the research, in the study, do they represent other portions of the population, right? And if they do, then you learned a lot about not just who took it, but other people out there as well. Random sampling, again, once you have your random population, people, for example, getting the placebo needs to be random, right? People getting the caffeine pills needs to be random, right? Because again, you might have randomly brought in a bunch of people to, let's go back to the caffeine example. You might have brought in a bunch of people to, does caffeine improve athletic performance, right? And once you have your random population, these people that you have randomly brought in, when it comes to assignment, assigning them who's going to get the decaf coffee, who's going to get the coffee, who's going to get a energy bar, or whatever it might be, you have to make that assignment random as well, because, or else I can look at all these people I randomly brought in, and that person looks pretty athletic, that person looks pretty athletic, and so now you're not getting a really great judge of, did the caffeine actually work? Did it impact their athletic performance, or is this person just really athletic anyways? So random assignment, once you have selected all these people, you randomly assign them to the experimental group, the control group, the placebo group, right? That way, there's no bias, added in by Maddie Reiser's part, right? Random selection, again, once you have the sample, everyone has an equal chance, a random chance to be thrown into this group or that group, right? Random selection, random assignment kind of go hand in hand, absolutely go hand in hand. And again, you just, the whole purpose of this is to eliminate bias, right? 100% to eliminate bias, to eliminate Hawthorne effect and all that kind of stuff. So you can get results that are as pure, as natural, and as representative as possible. As you are doing these experiments, it's important that you keep in mind all the ethical considerations, right? That the American Psychological Association, the APA, has put together. There are several out there. I think you guys had, when you did the test, had to know 6 or 7 of them. Again, I think a lot of that would be multiple choice based on the exam, but I think you could easily see it in FRQ as well. In fact, you're going to have an FRQ that involves ethical consideration. But chief amongst them would be informed consent, that people who are going to be in a psychology experiment, they need to know they're going to be in a psychology experiment, right? You need their permission, right? So you guys sign permission slips, your parents sign permission slips for you to do this or that as a student. If you're in a psychology study, you have to sign on that dotted line saying, yes, I agree to take these pills, or I agree to let someone put, electric nodes on my head, right? That you have given them consent to do this experiment, but the informed consent, informed is important as well, that they have actually told you something about the experiment, right? That you're not just writing your name next to, I volunteer for $50 a day to do this experiment. No, that's dangerous on your part. You sign your name next to, I agree to $50 per day on this experiment that consists of details, right? That they are telling you something about the experiment, so you have an informed decision that you can make. Debriefing. So once that experiment is over, they tell you something about it, right? That they help you understand why you had to take these pills. They understand, or that you understand why you had to look at all these note cards, these flashcards, from the previous examples we talked about, right? So they debrief you. That way you know something, or more about the role that you just played, and something about the results that came about it, how you helped, right? How they are going to learn from what you did. So they debrief you. And I think another big one that you need to know is there should be a rule of confidentiality, right? That, depending on the experiment, it's going to be really important to the people that their name be kept out of it, right? And the results not be shared with anyone else. And so I think to eliminate Hawthorne effect and stuff like that, they need to feel safe. They need to feel protected. No harm will come from them during the experiment. But also, their picture is going to be thrown out there to the world doing something from the experiment, or their personal results aren't going to be thrown out there. That they spent 30 minutes doing all these note cards and they tested really low, right? And they would feel bad about themselves. So confidentiality is at play as well. You can't just all of a sudden up and decide that you are going to do, especially on human beings, that you are going to do an experiment, right? It's called the IRB, which is the Institutional Review Board, basically the group of people that are in charge of making sure your experiment is relevant, right? That it's worthy of bringing human beings in, but also everything, all the details you have put into place. This is what I want to do: A, B, C, and D. I need human beings to do this. That way I can learn blank, right? This board is actually going to sit there and decide, yes, your experiment is worth this, or no, it is not. And they can shut you down, right? And I think a lot of the experiments that have been done in the past, like Zimbardo's Stanford prison experiment and Milgram's experiment on basically authority and deviance, that a lot of those probably wouldn't be able to be pulled off today because of things like the APA and like the IRB, right? So, it certainly serves a purpose. I would go back and look at the rest of the ethical considerations, but I think the top three you want to know is, did they do their job informing, the participant and getting consent from the participant? Did they do their job debriefing and letting them know, hey, we're not just, trying to manipulate you just for the heck of it. This is what we learned. And then again, that the results should be, or your participation should be kept confidential. Other than that, that's about it. Again, the APA, I'm just looking over here. The APA is in charge of those ethical guidelines that we talked about. And I think on an FRQ, you could easily come across in any of those research questions, identify 3 ethical considerations that, this fictitious experimenter should keep in mind. Or maybe they would have you evaluate which of the following ethical considerations were violated. And so, yeah, you definitely need to know about those, no harm to humans or animal, everything should be kept legal. It's important to keep those, or to review those. That way you're prepared. Because like I said, one of those FRQ questions is going to be about research. All right, so that's the second one today on research to send out. Hopefully they were kind of shortish. And like I said in the post, I am going to be sending out some FRQs, and I'll have more details in the post, but one of those I'm going to want to discuss on Wednesday. And then one of those, maybe both of those, we'll discuss on Wednesday. I'm going to try to keep them again, they're actually FRQs from previous exams that maybe I'll modify a little bit. That way we can get through them a little quicker, but you can still learn and we can discuss those, as a group. So again, I think it's Wednesday at 11. We'll go live, and I'll send that link and password out. And then Friday at 11, we'll go live as well, right? So this week, because we have 3 A days, you have 2 videos of notes here today. And you've got a couple assignments that are coming your way, and hopefully we can learn a little bit in those live sessions as well. So you guys shoot me an email if you have any questions, and hopefully we're knocking a little bit of this away at a time. All right, thanks guys.